Welcome to Sunday Gravy Radio, where our opinions fly, some stories get told, and no conversation is too weird to make the menu. I'm Mark, and joining me is Tim. We're your hosts, mixing together movies, debates, life experiences, and whatever else catches our attention this week. So grab a seat at the table, and we'll see where the gravy goes. And this episode is number 8, and we're talking about memorable vacations, things that stuck out as we grew up on trips here, there, and everywhere with family or by ourselves. Tim, you've got, you already said you got some things lined up from your most recent travel back here, right?
We'll get into that. I mean, we got a whole bunch of little topics here we could cover, and then I'll come back. It'll be the one under the weirdest or most unique thing you experienced while traveling, and it's ripped from the headlines just 2 days ago.
Yeah. But anyway, let's get right into it. Tim, I'll let you go first. A vacation you'll never forget.
It's going to come in 2 parts. It's going to be the first things from the first time we went to Hawaii, and then the fourth time, which was just 2 years ago in 2024. The first one was in 2006, July of 2006. And the reason I say it's a vacation you never forget, because once you get on the island, you can feel what they call the mana, the power of the gods. But it's also a lot of healing properties. But what made that really truly the most memorable part of that vacation is when we went to Pearl Harbor. And you go in, you stand in line, and then you get a program ticket. Then we were taken on a highlights of Honolulu tour, and we were brought back just in time to go into a little theater, and they show actual footage of the day of infamy. And then you take the boat ride across to the Arizona Memorial, and you have about 150 people on there at any one time. And when you get on there, the park ranger said, "This is a burial site. Be quiet." And Mark, you could hear a pin drop. It was so silent. Imagine. And you walk along. It's like in a line. And then they have in the back part, one part of it, they have a wall of all those that died there. And you just come back around. So it was very powerful, because you could see after all those years, the oil still bubbles up from one of the smokestacks, and it just trails along the Pacific, trails along the waterway out to, the Pacific Ocean. So it was that's kind of a little bit eerie, but
I could imagine when you said you could hear a pin drop. I could imagine because I've never been to Hawaii. Well, maybe it was 8 or 9 years old. I've been to Arlington, where they do the
Arlington
Unknown
Cemetery.
Soldier, the Tomb of Unknown Soldier. And I would have to assume it's the same thing, where you shut up. If you're going to be flabbergasted, flapping your gums, get out of there type of thing. Don't come type of thing, right? It's a place for respect and dignity.
And there was a Japanese woman that was there on board, and she took a flower and threw it into the, right above where the Arizona's at. So, either she had Japanese American, or she was from Japan originally, and maybe she had somebody who on the Japanese side that died, or they may have already been in the States, and she had somebody, a family member, maybe served in the Navy, the U.S. Navy. You don't know, but it was something that was powerful.
Did they give her a hard time for doing that, or was it just you could do it if you want? Because I can imagine people are going to be dropping stuff. She did it.
She just it was just a one little lone red flower. I don't know what kind, and went right in. Okay. She just threw it, tossed overboard. Yeah, they didn't, she wasn't admonished for doing it. It was, it was doing things wrong. So now, to make it like another vacation we never forget, now we fast forward 18 years to going back to Hawaii again. And this time we took a cruise the first couple times, and then we figured out where's our happy spot, which island. It's the big island of Hawaii. We've stayed there a total of 20 days between 2 trips. And what made it memorable, because Judy reminded me of this, is we did a lot of cool stuff when we were there that we didn't before. We went through this. There's a whole quarter where there's an ecotourism, and we went to a seahorse farm. We were able, they talk about the seahorses and everything, and then you're able to put your hands in the water, and they teach you how to use your hands and form it like it's coral, and then they'll take a seahorse and wrap it around your finger. So that was pretty cool. And then we went another day to a salt farm where they harvested 2,000 feet below the ocean, and they make a lot. They make different types of edible salts, in their flavor that you could use for your cooking for your food. And they have like things for soaking, magnesium. And then we ended up going back later, and this was just by chance, maybe the next day, where we got to sit and listen to Henry Capono.
Nice.
That was truly amazing, and obviously anybody that's listening that knows from the Steve Down Gary Meyer days
Yep.
that they used to have Henry on there a
Quite a
lot,
bit.
and
Absolutely.
that was very special to us. So that's my vacations you'll never forget. I mean, we've had many. We've been to Italy. We're going to go back again this year. But when you're talking about for that little blurb right there, that's what made those two different visits to Hawaii. But that's what made them something I'll never forget.
There we go. Nice. Very nice. I've never been to Hawaii. That'll lead into our bucket list destination or hidden gem. But as far as me, vacation I'll never forget it involves Disney World. The first would be when I was a kid, still living at home and all that. Me, my brother, my mom, dad went. Now this was we've done small trips, Michigan, St. Louis, stuff like that. Going to Disney World, this was my first plane ride on a jet. I've been on a Cessna before over by the airport by our house, but that's up and down 10 minutes. This is big time for me. I'm feel like I'm highfalutin. It may sound stupid to somebody else, but again, not being on a plane, you have a different perspective of the clouds and seeing the land underneath the clouds and all this stuff. And that just kind of blew my mind, where it's just, you got this different perspective. And then you get to Florida, you get to Disney World. Now this was, oh boy, 1980, I believe. I mean, it was just the Magic Kingdom in Epcot. That was at Epcot, just opened maybe a year prior, maybe even a few months. And that was it. Universal didn't exist. International Drive, well, it existed, but all that. I mean, back in 1980, it was it. The only hotels were the Contemporary, the Polynesian, and the military one, Shades of Green. Now you had smaller ones off property, but just those three hotels, and that's it. We got the monorail. Being a kid, first big trip like this with the family, and okay, we've all been to Great America up here, right? Tim, you've been to Six Flags probably hundreds of times. Being a kid, probably that was my amusement park, which was nice. Back then, it was nice. I mean, now you go to Disney World, and this is 100 times better. You've got more options to do. And this was the first one. We stayed at Polynesian, where, my brother and I were old enough to be left by ourselves. I mean, nowadays, I necessarily wouldn't let my kids do that, be on their own. And it's just the whole feeling of this whole place. It's like our whole town is just this resort. The sheer magnitude of it, I couldn't wrap my mind around it. So we stay at the Polynesian, and me and my brother, yeah, go ahead. Just make sure you're back here at this time, whatever, let us know what you're doing. So we go on a monorail by ourselves. We go to the park. And again, this may seem goofy to some people, but when you leave someplace, you come back in, they stamp your hand, right? You see the ink. Well, they did that, but it was invisible ink. You had to hand your hand underneath a black light to see your hand stamp. Nowadays, it's all magic bands and all that, but I thought that was totally awesome. Like, hey, this is cool. They got this magic ink. So you go on the monorail, you get in, and it's like Great America 10 times over. Being this first big vacation, I remember every little detail. Hanging at the resort. I think we were down there for maybe a week and a half. So hanging at the resort, everything was included, or at least you show them your card. I don't know if it was included, but maybe they charge you at the end. The main thing I got to eat down there at the resort, cream of chicken and rice soup. Yeah, middle of August. It was hotter than snot down there. And I just love this chicken and rice soup they had at the Polynesian. So I would get that. They had a little arcade there. I played Dig Dug, just to get out of the heat a little bit when we weren't at the park. But it was just having so much fun on a grand scale. other than going to St. Louis or wherever else, we'd go these small little trips in the car and all that. Now, fast forwarding to 2015, same place, Disney World. And I took my family, my kids, my wife, and I wanted to make the same magic for them because they've been to Great America a few times and smaller vacations here and there. So this was the first big one for them. I wanted to do the same thing for them. But the kind of the kicker was my mom and dad went, but they didn't know until we got down there. They stayed at the same resort. And then we got in way late. It was maybe midnight. And my parents had already been there for a day. So we go to the same resort. We had some snacks shipped down there. They picked them up for us. And then we told them, hey, we got to go to this room, check something out. They opened the door, and there's Grandma and Poppy. And the look on their face meant the world to me. You know, if my life ended there, that would be perfect. I mean, they were so happy that, you know, the grandma and grandpa were there. We're all doing this together. We had the same type of fun. And now it was more expensive. Obviously, there was more. Tens and tens more hotels there. International drives built up. You got Universal Studios. Chris and I have been there, you know, several times before the kids were even born. But it's two different worlds. Two absolutely different worlds from when I went first and when they went. Just the sheer look on their face of the sheer surprise and the big smiles on their face. I don't know, even if we took them to Hawaii now or maybe England or Poland or Italy, wherever, I don't think I would ever see the same type of smile because I think it just meant the world to them. You know, we had to scrounge a little bit for money because everything's more expensive. The smiles on their face just said everything. I don't know, like, you've got to go back to that. You've got all these resorts and everything is taken care of. You got the transportation. It's not like you got to get on a CTA bus, you know, the green limousine.
Very cool.
Yeah. Tim, how about a vacation disaster that became a great story?
Judy, been vacationing. We've never had something like that. And I try to think back for when we were kids, and we never had anything because a lot of them were really smaller vacations.
Mm-hmm.
We'd go to Kentucky Lake,
right.
Ludington, Michigan, little sites, short side trips and
mm-hmm.
day trips and things like that. And we did one in 1977. We did one 3-week vacation out west, and it was all driving. And if you want to talk about it being, the only thing that would have been disastrous about it was we had so imagine now there's a family of 5 and we got to packing for 3
mm-hmm. weeks. Did you bring Edna with and strap her to the roof?
No, but the suitcases, an Olds Electra didn't have a lot of room in it. So mm-hmm. in the trunk, so the trunk was packed, and then there, like, me and my brother sat in the back, the whole time, and suitcases were stuffed in between the footwells. So the whole time,
no room, huh?
The whole time our feet are up on these suitcases. So we're like kind of in this tilt back condition. But it really wasn't, I wouldn't call it disaster, just uncomfortable. But how did it become a great story? We did, when we started, we, start from Illinois, ended up in Springfield, Missouri, and that's just an overnight. We were in El Paso and Amarillo, Texas. We went in New Mexico, Carlsbad Caverns. We ended up spending about 5 days with my aunt and uncle in Tucson. So that was kind of like really a refresher, a break.
Right.
We spent a night in a cabin, and I mean, it was a really rustic cabin just outside of Grand Canyon. So we went to Grand Canyon, and then we went to, spend a couple days in Vegas, Colorado Springs, Four Corners. And then on the way back, my dad got tired. So we ended up in Kearney, Nebraska in a Holodome, and he ended up paying for a second day because he was just so tired when he went doing all the driving. Then we came back through Iowa and back home. So, those were great stories because, we're visiting these different national parks, and just you're seeing the country by just traveling by car. And it was, I mean, that was a long, it was a long 3 weeks, but it was good.
I can't drive that far now. 5 hours, maybe 8 hours. That's about it. But you were kids, so you didn't know any better. And if you wanted to go on a
Right.
trip, you had no choice, right?
Yeah, I was only 13 at the time. So,
Yeah.
but we, it was just, you got to do all these things and see all these things as you're driving the countryside. So it was pretty cool. That's why it was a great story. But again, by far it was not a disaster.
Right. Yeah.
I guess if you want to talk about a disaster, I got to go back to 1972. Now that I think about this, we took the Amtrak from Joliet out to California, and we stayed with my cousin who was working at Disneyland.
Nice.
He eventually went, while he was going to college, he eventually became a Spanish teacher, and then he went on to become a Catholic priest. But when we were there staying with him, I ended up coming down with the German measles.
Oh, nice.
So I remember having to, and it's not as, I had to soak in oatmeal baths because it was so itchy, things like that. But I think it really resolved itself
Right.
in a day or so. I don't remember.
That's the last thing you want to do, though.
If we had to hole up in his apartment or not. I don't remember that, but that would be, if you talk about a disaster, is contracting something while you're there, and it interrupts you. It interrupts you a little bit, but otherwise, that was still a great. It was a great trip. We went to Disneyland. Probably did it a couple days.
Right.
I don't remember what else we did when we were out there, but that for sure.
Right.
So,
yeah.
What about you?
Well, as far as like you said, there's really nothing disaster like, you regret this. But I just asked my mom yesterday, maybe I was 7 or 8, and it was just maybe a weekend or an extended weekend in Michigan at some lake. I asked her where, she couldn't remember. It was a high school friend of my dad and his buddy. It was like a lake house. Everything was fine. I really don't remember much of what we did and all that, but this lake house had a swing, like, 3 kids, maybe 4 kids could fit on the swing, small kids. And it was up in a big tree. Well, they were getting pushed. I don't know how many minutes. And then all of a sudden I felt we all just started going down to the ground, and then I get hit in the head. I'm like, what the hell's going on? Well, what ends up happening, and this may explain a lot of things. I'm sure it definitely explains a lot of things. What happened was a nail that was holding the rope in this tree went into my head, went into my skull. And I had no idea. No blood was coming out or nothing. I can't remember that I felt anything, but all I remember is everybody rushing around, grabbing me, putting me in a car. And then the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital ER. I've got the, sterile drape over my head. And that was pretty much it. This swing falling down, a nail in my head. But again, I don't remember where it was. It wasn't on Lake Michigan itself. It was just, one of the millions of lakes that are in Michigan somewhere. And it wasn't necessarily a disaster. It's just one of those things you remember, and I'm sure it screwed up a lot of plans. And maybe whoever the owner of the house was probably worried that my parents would sue them. I don't think they did, but it's one of those things. But yeah, as far as disaster, I can't really think of anything or disastrous. One thing I remember my wife talking about when she was a kid and going to Disney World, they drove. She's a couple years younger than me. Maybe she was same age as I was when I went down there, 10 years old maybe. And I think they all went. And she's got 4 brothers and her, so that's 5. So that's 7 people in this station wagon. And she said the back windows didn't roll down. It's just the way they were. Well, one of her brothers gets motion sickness because her dad wasn't the greatest driver. You could definitely get motion sickness. Well, one of her brothers decides to yak all over the door and door window. So,
very nice.
Dead of summer, you clean it up the best you can. But when you think of a door panel and just think of spilling coffee, you can't just wipe it up. It's getting behind everything and every nook and cranny inside the door panel itself. And she said the smell was just horrendous. And they were on their way down there. So they had to go down, stay down for how many days, and then drive back with No windows be able to be rolled down in the back. Yeah, that wouldn't. That'd be a disaster on my end. I'd say I'd have to agree that would be a disaster. But it's a great story. It comes up every now and then.
There you go.
Bucket list destinations versus the hidden gems. Bucket list destination or hidden gem. I would think they're interchangeable because you like you said, you've been to Hawaii. I've never been. I would definitely put that as a bucket list and a hidden gem. I mean, there's got to be hidden gems there. I mean, whether you go to Pearl Harbor or the coffee plantations or go see Kilauea, right. So I would have to say they're synonymous. I've never been to Italy. I've never been to Poland. I think I'd rather do the hidden gems myself because there's so many hidden gems around here, even in Illinois, Iowa, Kentucky, Tennessee, even by you, North Carolina.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
But would it necessarily be a hidden bucket list? Like, going out to go and see you guys, that was on our list, but is it necessarily bucket list? I don't want to be rude or anything, but Hawaii would be on a bucket list versus going to North Carolina. But right. There were many hidden gems in North Carolina.
Before you leave the world.
Right. There were many hidden gems in North Carolina that we saw. We saw the waterfall. What was it? Our first full day? You took us to the waterfall there, and then jump off rock, and then go into Chimney Rock. That's a gem because of what happened there. So I'd have to go hidden gem because you could do more of those versus bucket list. It's more practical to do. I mean, after we left you, we went to Gatlinburg and Pigeon Forge. We've been there a couple times. It's nothing but a tourist trap, right? I mean, mini golf, go-karts, T-shirt shops, fudge. But you've got the national park in Smoky Mountains itself. So we did a tour, Jeep tour. Never done that before. I consider that a hidden gem. So I go for hidden gems. What about you, Tim?
Okay, well, I guess when it comes to, bucket list, just things that it's things you want to see before you leave this earth. And we're considering next year doing I think it's a 10 or 11 day tour where it takes you out to the Badlands, to Mount Rushmore, to Yellowstone, to the Grand Tetons, all areas again, it's just, so you'll be in Montana, Wyoming, South Dakota. It's things we've never done. So bucket list for me, for sure, is that I'm trying to convince a friend of mine out here to go with me. Now his background is he used to fly B-52s for the Air Force, nice. But he, by education, he's an aerospace engineer, and I can't remember. I think he wanted to be an astronaut, but I don't remember what it was that stopped him. I don't remember that part of it, but I'm trying to convince him, let's go to space camp
that would be cool.
In Huntsville, Alabama.
Right.
And it's like a 3-day. You arrive there for a Friday evening, and then you're done by early Sunday.
Right.
But you get to have the astronaut experience. Just, it'd be something to do. That would be a bucket list type of thing. And just different areas that you've seen. Again, when you talk about the hidden gems, like, the Hawaiian hidden gems.
Right.
Is, it was Pearl Harbor when we saw Henry Capono, all these little different things that we did. It was doing something different than what we had been there a few times before. And then, you just get this hidden thing. A hidden gem for me, too, was recently, back in April, we did a celebrity cruise, and we already talked about this, but going to the Truman White House, the Little White House, they call it, where Harry Truman spent 175 days of his presidency there. And it was really it's a way to get away from the pressures of Washington and everything he had to do, because in his first couple of months, he had to drop the bomb. And he was just finishing out Roosevelt's term, which I think he just started really before he died. But to go there and learn about him, that was, and the more and more I hear about him, I just listened to I'm listening to a podcast called Medal of Honor, Stories of Courage. It's all about people that have been awarded, either a civilian highest honor or the Congressional Medal of Honor. So, and he had to present medals to a couple different soldiers that were in Vietnam. I think it was Vietnam or Korea, one of the two. They gave a little bit of blurb of his speech, what he said, and it's just how it makes sense, what patriotism means and sacrifice means. So he's somebody that I'm going to try to learn a little bit more about. So that was a hit, it's one of them hidden gems. You pick something up out of there. And I mean, we've had so many different things. We've had like Glacier National Park when we went to Alaska, and you're out by a glacier and you get to see it. It's pretty cool. So there'd be way too many to list here. Well, so there's a couple.
Even here back home, Tim, I just went and I shared on our other show, and I shared with you, going to Capone's gravesite. That's a little hidden gem. I've been by there millions. Yes. I've been past the cemetery millions and millions of times. I live 40 minutes away, maybe 45 minutes, depending on traffic, and I've never stopped by there. That's where Dennis Farina. He's
Dennis Farina.
He's in the same cemetery.
Frank Nitty's in there. There's a whole bunch of them in there.
A whole bunch of mobsters are in there. And it's just one of those things where, what's a hidden gem in your area? We got a buddy that lives up Milwaukee Way. What's a hidden gem there? I mean, you've got Miller Brewery. That's a little hidden gem. It's a common thing that you go to all the time, just like when you go to St. Louis, you go to Budweiser. But, it's all those things. Or even in downtown Chicago, you've got the Billy Goat Tavern.
Right, yes.
It's nothing big, nothing huge, but it's made famous from Saturday Night Live. It's a cool little thing. So, what's a hidden gem to our listeners? We want to hear from you. The weirdest or most unique thing you experienced while traveling? I'm going to go with this one, Tim. I'm going to say the most unique thing was just recently when we visited you, the Chimney Rock and Lake Lure area.
Yes.
Now, it was 24, right, when Helene came through and the storms before.
September 24, towards the way end of September.
Now, you think mountains, and you're a good couple of hours in, not distance wise, but still, what's going to be affected in the mountains from a friggin' hurricane that traversed the Gulf of Mexico, right? Mm-hmm. Now, when this stuff's rolling through, I'm watching YouTube of the storm chasers and just people in general in this area. I could barely get a hold of you because your cell service you had no phone service for a while.
About a month,
even then, you didn't know much of what the hell was going on around you because you just couldn't get to it, and you've been to these places.
No TV, no internet, no nothing.
Right. But anyway, you see these things, you see this destruction of the Chimney Rock area, in Lake Lure and all this. They say 12 metric tons of trash was dumped into Lake Lure that they had to get out, that just flowed into there. Now, I've been through hurricane damaged areas in Florida. We've been through Miami and Clearwater area, in Sarasota area. They've had hurricanes, but they've get flooded. But when you drive through afterwards, year and a half after, like we saw Chimney Rock area, it's just buildings and businesses that are not there anymore, but they're rebuilt. You don't have roads that are washed out. You don't have riverbeds that have changed their flow patterns and directions and areas where they're flowing. Streets are still there. They're just cleaned up in Florida hurricanes and stuff like that. Things are made whole much, much faster. Now, when we went to visit you, you took us through there. You said you hadn't been back since. And
no, that was the first time that we were back there since.
Right.
It could have been, we went with my mom and stepdad. We took them to Chimney Rock and we did the Lake Lure tour.
Right.
And then, yes, we did that. So I think that might have been the last time we were there before
the hurricane.
Yeah. So you're talking a year. We haven't been there in a year. I think so.
So what I'm getting at is I'm seeing all this destruction from these storms in the Chimney Rock. These people walking because you can't drive. They're on 4x4s, they're on horseback, or they're flying drones in this area. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, damn, this place is jacked up. This is screwed up. Mm-hmm. I can't compare it to places I've seen in Florida and been through after storms where it's already cleaned up. They just have to sweep the sand off the roads. They had to build new roadways, new bridges to get into the national park there, state park, whatever it is. And what were we parked? What's the name of that restaurant that you were saying?
It was called Burnshirt Winery,
Yeah,
and
Berkshire.
they used to have like the outdoor
Right,
deck area. I mean, it totally gone, washed away. That
right.
really struck me. And then when we went to Lake Lure with you guys,
Mm-hmm.
the whole visitor center gone, wiped out off the
Yep.
foundation.
Yeah. I mean, they had a building there where we rented, where we paid the tickets for the boat tour and all that. But you've got the marina and docks that they're still rebuilding, for the boats, for the
Yep.
people there. And again, you see this stuff on the news, and it's like, third world country, probably not even third world country, fourth world country. There's no way they're going to come back. No freaking way. And we're there having lunch at this place that you see, there's no way you're going to drive a truck down the street. And sure enough, we're driving down the street. If you do a Google map search of Chimney Rock and Lake Lure and all that, you could see what was damaged and how they repaired it. It's like literally right outside where we ate lunch. You could see the fresh new pavement of where this place, it should have been gone. This whole area should have been gone.
To get a true flavor of it, you'd want to get before and then after that.
Yeah.
That'll really send it home for you what it was like, what that damage really was done.
So when I talk about a vacation, I won't forget being Disney World for me, and it's a whole different perspective of being in the sky flying. This is unique, where there's no way that you think no way this place is ever going to come back. They'll be shuttered, and then you're there spending your dollars there. And on our Miami Vice show, when you went through this and you finally came back, I definitely mentioned the only way these places are going to survive is by going there and spending your money. So, I mean, insurance is always going to pay for the buildings to get rebuilt, buy your new equipment. You could get government loans and grants. That means crap if people aren't there spending money to pay your people who are doing the work. So, unique, definitely. It's just a store where you could buy the usual artsy-fartsy stuff. It's just a restaurant. It's just a this. It's just a that. But you know what? What they've been through and how they're back, it's definitely unique in my book, Tim, to say the least.
So I have the weirdest, and this is ripped from the headlines 2 days ago. We were recently in Illinois.
Here we go.
for a visit. And it's when we were coming back. We were at Midway Airport. And Allegiant doesn't allow you to check until exactly 2 hours prior to your flight. So you have to just sit in this waiting area. So we had to sit a little bit further away from the counter than we normally did. But that's where the door opens and you have the upper level where people could get dropped off, for departures, and you'd be right at the ticketing gate. So you have the upper level. So you have to come up on a ramp for that. And then you have the lower level where arrivals are at, or all your shuttle buses and all that. So when we were in there, So
hold on, Tim. So you couldn't even check in. You couldn't go past security until 2 hours ahead of time.
No, we were sitting. We were sitting just in it's kind of like a waiting area, waiting for.
You're right. Yeah, I know.
Allegiant to open up.
Huh?
So
that's weird.
We're sitting there, and we see this guy. And if you remember from Sanford and Son, Grady. This guy kind of looked like Grady, and he was wearing, now it was very hot out. He's wearing like a raincoat, a light raincoat.
It wasn't Rollo? It wasn't Rollo?
No. He looked like he's having a psychotic break because he's talking to himself. He's like taking his hands like and pretending like he's putting his hood on. Then eventually he did put the hood on. His eyes are rolling in the back of his head, and he's looking up, he's talking. Well, then he ends up exiting. He just went out front the top level ramp there, and then about 10 minutes later another guy comes in, and he had no shoes on, and he had deranged look. That's, for lack of a better term, he looked deranged. And as he's walking, and he walked in from the upper level, and then he was going to take the stairs going down back out,
right?
And he was carrying a hatchet in his hand. Now the hatchet had one of the leather covers on it, so the blade wasn't exposed, but that doesn't mean you couldn't do damage even with that on. So when that happened, some other guy gets up, he runs to the counter. I saw a TSA agent standing there looking over the upper level to the lower level, and I said, "There's a guy that was just over there." And he goes, "Oh, that's serious, man. Well, you better get somebody on it. Look for him."
Think?
He probably went down and then went out, but it's like, to me, that's really lacks security, and it's more, there's not
Right.
as much of a heavier Chicago police presence, and who knows if they were pulled out of those details, put on the street to fill in
Oh no, they're
for
at the mayor's
shortages
house.
and stuff. No
They're covering the
idea.
mayor. But
What's
anyways,
that?
they're covering the mayor. That's why they're protecting the mayor. But that's a different story.
I mean but I mean, usually you'd see them in there with canines and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing,
Yeah.
not at all. So here's this guy walking around with a hatchet. So it doesn't end there. Now we get on the flight.
Unreal, but not surprising, Tim. Right?
Well,
Chicago.
I guess, yeah, from our days in the fire department, right? But just when you think you've seen it all, you see more. So,
but wait, there's more.
We get on the flight. We're seated already, and we've been taking the exit rows and paying for those because you get more leg room, and you have to pay a little bit more for that, but it's much nicer. Well, this woman gets on, and she has a beverage with her. And the flight attendant said, "I'm gonna have to take that from you, hon, because that's alcohol." No, it's not. It's orange juice. She said, in the airport, when there's no cover on it, that signifies alcohol. When there is a cover on it, it's, it could be pop, it could be weather, right. It could be coffee. So she gets pissy. She took it from her. She said, "It's just orange juice." And the flight attendant smells it, and she goes, "There's tequila in here." Well, this woman probably had she already pre-gamed with a couple already.
There we go.
Because you could tell, I mean, she wasn't stumbling drunk, but to me, borderline.
Right.
So now she sits down and she starts pouting. And as the flight attendant goes up to the front, just doing their thing, and she's leaning out and she's flipping her off.
Oh, nice.
Calling her the big C word, but not to her face. She didn't hear it. So as she's sitting there, and then she turns and looks at me and Judy, and then there's another guy that was sitting next to us. Looks at us. Do you believe that? See, and see you next Tuesday. We'll just go with that. And then she starts filming. So then another flight attendant walks by, and I tap her on the arm, and I said, "She's going to be a problem." So she goes up front, grabs the other flight attendant who dealt with her, and she came over and she read her the riot act, and she said, "Do you understand? You do not interrupt this flight. You do not interrupt me or your fellow passengers. You do not disturb us. Do you understand that?" "Yeah." "Do you understand that? Because we haven't pulled away from the gate yet, and if you keep it up, we're going to just throw you off. Yep. Once we leave the ground, if you start up, we're going to have law enforcement waiting for you on the other end in Asheville." So now she's sitting there and she's sulking the rest of the time. But when you know it, as she gets off the plane, as she's going to get off the plane,
MRFers, right?
She went right up to that flight attendant and said, "What's your name?" and then gets off.
None your business.
So there you go. That was all packed into a few hours in good old Midway Airport. But after we saw Mr. Hatchetman, we went in, we sat down, and we had some lunch and a beverage at Riley's daughter.
Riley's daughter. I was just going to ask Riley's daughter. There you go. Yeah. Now, you were saying something before. Just visiting Asheville, or definitely a resident of Chicago area? What are your thoughts? I'm going to say a resident of Chicago.
I think she was a resident of Chicago, but it could be somebody who lived in Chicago and moved to Asheville. It's one or the other, but either way,
yeah.
Just another in a long list of colorful characters that have graced my life.
but now that you mention that, that's one thing I have done. I'm not judgmental. Let me make that right now. I don't judge anybody or anything, but when you're at an airport and you're going, from here to Miami or Fort Lauderdale, and you see people that are going to be on the same plane as you, I always think, are they just visiting like us, or do they live in Miami or Orlando or Tampa or wherever you're going? You're wondering by the dress, by what they're wearing, or by how they're talking. It's just a little thing to waste time.
She's definitely not. If she was from North Carolina, she definitely was not a North Carolinian as far as native. because she
Right.
didn't have a Southern drawl. She was,
There you go.
I don't believe her to have been there, but if she
Right.
does live here, it's,
Transplant.
she's a transplant
Right.
from somewhere else.
Yeah. Again, not judging. It's just a fun little game at the airport to waste time.
Mm-hmm.
Do they belong to where we're going, or are they like me coming back and just visit? Anyway, moving on. How has your vacation style changed over the years? Well, this is a simple one. You know, Chris and I dating started in '88 and all that, and we travel to wherever, and it's just us two. Maybe we'd go with some other friends, and then we get married. And then it's our honeymoon trip. Where we hope to make the best memories ever, and then number one is born, and you take him on his first trip to Disney World, and then number two is born. You take her on her first trip, and then now we visited you. It's back to just Chris and I. Number two is like, oh, how come I can't go? Well, you want to hang out with people over 50 doing quote unquote old people things?
Right.
We'll take you. You're never not welcome, but we'll take you. But you're going to want to do what we're going to do, because we ain't going to want to do what you want to do. That's for dang sure.
Right.
So yeah, it's changed. Definitely, it evolves. It changes over the years to, we do a lot more active things. Well, Chris can't do a lot of active things now, just with bones and muscles and knee aches and all this stuff. You just can't. But, when you have kids that are young, you're going to want to do all those kid things that necessary. I don't want to do now. I'll go to Disney World still, but I'm not going to go on all the rides, and I don't want to go see Mickey Mouse and whatever. So it depends on who you're with and why you're traveling. So it's kind of a simple question. Depends on who you're with and how you feel. Now, in 5 years from now, are we going to be wanting to, talking about our next show, retirement, or are we going to want to be seeing retirement areas, not necessarily having fun, but visiting where we may want to put our feet down forever, what do you think,
Right.
Tim?
I guess vacation stuff, when you're talking about that, when you're younger, you're just a little bit more adventuresome and things. And I remember when we went to the Caribbean, we did snorkeling and stuff. It's something we wouldn't do now. Now it's a little bit more slower paced, and but it's looking for, again, it goes back to, this could tie into like bucket list hidden gems, because you're looking, we want to see as much as we can before we go. And
Right.
We've done a lot in the States, and we've been a year once. We're going to go again, and we don't know. After that, we're thinking about another trip, but it wouldn't be right away. It might be a few years, whatever. But the one thing that you have to realize is that, and people that are around here, we're not a 55 plus community, but we may as well be. And you got people that say, you want to travel now when you can, when you're like physically able to travel, because then that limits what you're going to do. But even when you're maybe into your 70s or 80s, if you make it that long, there's always going to be trips for you. There's going to be trips designed around those age groups, those decades of life. So it's really going from being more adventuresome to want a nice quiet trip,
Right.
and see something that's awe-inspiring.
Exactly. I was looking at stuff, before we came out to see you. Would you have ziplined if I wanted to zipline?
I probably would have, because I always threatened Judy that we're going to zipline. Nope. You could do it. Nope. So there is one in Saluda. Again, right. Is it up and running and active? Because Saluda was another one of those areas hit by Helene, but it's there.
Also, definitely.
Hey, Mark, I want to do space camp.
I'd go. Hell, I'd go. I'm not going to do that thing where they're spinning you around on the gyro. There's no way I'm doing that.
No, they don't have it. They have the thing where you're like, you feel like you're in gravity, and you go. They do put you upside down and right side up, but it's not the vomit comet.
Okay, I don't do spinnies. I'm sorry, but yeah, it definitely changes. So now our last thing here: do you prefer relaxing on a beach or staying busy sightseeing? I would have to say it depends on where you're at. Now, yeah, relaxing is always nice because you could get into this mood where you just enjoy who you're with and where you're at. But it's also okay if I've been, we've been to Florida quite a few times. I've seen everything, do everything. Is there something else I could see? Like when I talked about on our cruise show, they have all these ports of call that you pay for and all that the ship takes you on, or you could do, whatever private excursions. But on our honeymoon cruise, we were in Cozumel. We took the taxi to the shopping area, and you could walk back. It was maybe a mile, 3/4 of a mile, so it wasn't terrible for mid 20-year-old people. But we didn't. We already drove past the main drag. I'm like, let's go into the neighborhood. Now, I'm not talking, let's talk 10 miles into the seedy part of Cozumel. It was, a few streets over. And they had their own little neighborhood there. They had their own main drag for the people who live there. And that's what I wanted to see. When we went on a cruise with our other friends, they wanted to do, different things. But Chris and I wanted to get a flavor of the islands we were at. So we did a lot of tours. They took you into all these like banana plantation or wherever you see in the sites where you're not going to see probably ever again in your life. So I would have, again, it's one of those, depending on where you're at, if I'd have to pick one of the two, I'd say relaxing on a beach, because I could always dream of seeing a sight, I guess.
Okay. So
What do you
here's
think?
I could wrap this into both of them in how our vacation style. And we've always done this. So let's just say it's not something that's a cruise or it's a tour based one where you're going to be doing something every day. It's more when we go, let's say we just go to, whatever area. And we'll just pick, we used to go to Door County a lot in Wisconsin. So, we would find something to do. We find one thing to do in the day. You get up, you have a nice leisurely breakfast, then you hit the road,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll find things, and not just, and it could be anywhere like San Diego, whatever we did, you find that one sightseeing thing that you do. Then we always will have an appetizer lunch, just something a little bit lighter. So then you have a little bit, I don't know if it doesn't have to
Energy.
be a huge big dinner, but it's something that's, you don't want to spoil the dinner that you're going to have, right, wherever we're going to have. So we have that, but usually, you do that sightseeing thing. Then we come back. If we're in a hotel, we go to the pool, and we just, you just relax there. You read a little bit, and then you go to dinner. So that's really kind of like, it would be, we do something, but we're not on a go every single day. Now, right, when you're on a cruise, or when you're doing short excursions, or you're doing land-based tours where you have, something every day. But I'm sure you always have, on those things, you always have downtime. It's like when we went, right, we went on to Italy on a Viking cruise. You had your breakfast, you went and did your excursion, and then you came back. We would go into like the spa area, and they had steam room, they had an ice room. It was like Nordic healing, right, type of stuff, a sauna. So that's what we do. And then, in the evening, you find maybe a little bit of something to do, or nothing at all, and you just relax and watch the sunset. So that's pretty much how our vacation style is.
Yeah. But, like when we came by you took us on the points of interest.
Right.
We weren't rushing here, there, and everywhere. Hey, check this out. Cool. Awesome. It was kind of relaxing too, because we weren't rushing. Now, if you had a beach, right, there, we'd probably I'd definitely sit on a beach for a day along the river or something like that.
But that's what we did when we were just on the celebrity cruise, and we were in Bimini. Bimini was a day on a resort, and they did have a beach there, but they had a pool, and you just hung out there. Absolutely. And then when we did Turks and Caicos, we did that kind of underwater. They call it an underwater submarine, but it's really not a half thing submerged where you could see the sea life. We went back. They have public beaches. We spent a little bit of time there, and then went back to the ship. I mean, so that's really it. We do one thing, like you said, point of interest, have a nice appetizer lunch, relax by a pool, or the beach, and that's it.
All right. So that wraps up memorable vacations. We want to hear from you. How about, a vacation you won't forget or a vacation disaster, horror story, weirdest things you experienced while traveling? Let us know. Send us a note, send us an email, call us on our hotline. We want to hear from you.
Dummy. You big dummy. You big dummy. You big dummy. You big cold-blooded dummy. You big dummy. See what you did? Oh, no, you big dummy. Oh, no, you big dummy. You dummy.
Yeah, all right. Dummies in the news.
Dummy. I love that one.
Dummies in the news. Dateline, Thursday, July 9th, 2026. Where did I get this from? Yahoo News. Florida man. There you go. That says it all. That wraps up the segment. Florida man. Florida man fights police officers attempting to get him out of alligator-infested waters. Oh, boy. The story goes, one of the fastest ways to convince me not to go swimming has been to tell me there's an alligator in the water.
Yep.
Absolutely. That's because deputies in Flagler County, Florida, say they had to jump in a canal known for snakes and alligators and whatnot to rescue a man who fled from them, only to begin struggling in the water before fighting the very deputies striving to save him. Somehow, that wasn't the only bizarre arrest made over the weekend. We won't get into the other one. According to the Flagler County Sheriff's Office, they handled 1,300 calls, and this one, they encountered a 47-year-old called Ryan. We won't give his last name. He was lying shirtless outside Wadsworth Elementary School when they approached to check on him. He must have been more afraid of the police than the alligators and snakes because he took off running on foot. And the official Facebook post by the Flagler County Sheriff's states they eventually located this man near a canal behind the residence. But instead of speaking with deputies, authorities say he ran straight into the water and began swimming away. Again, the water known to be infested with gators and snakes and probably muskrats or whatever. Despite repeated commands to come back to shore, deputies say he refused. However, he looked like he was tired and in danger of drowning. So, police did what they do. They tried to pull him to safety. But this guy responded by pushing and pulling away, trying to force one of the deputies underwater while grabbing another by the neck. Well, sounds like a real winner. They eventually gained control of him and brought him safely back to shore before he was transported for medical evaluation, later arrested on 2 counts of battery on a law enforcement officer. So there is your dummy in the news. Tim, you want to close us out?
Sure can. All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Sunday Gravy Radio. Thanks for joining us. Our next show topic is going to be, for episode 9, is preparing for retirement. We're going to have a good friend of mine, Tom, come on. We've known each other since 2nd grade, and he's the most recent retiree. So we're going to ask him what it was like preparing in advance, and then once you transition into retirement. We have listed here a movie, but I think what we're going to do is for episode 10 is going to be a tribute to the recently deceased Randolph Mantooth, who played Johnny Gage on Emergency. So we'll talk about Emergency, and then we'll talk a little bit about Randolph Mantooth. The show Emergency inspired a lot of firefighters and people, or when you were kids, to be eventually grow up and become firefighter paramedics. So we'll talk all about that. So send in your comments, questions, or stories for those episodes now. We might read them or respond on the air. Our email is sundaygravyradio@gmail.com, and you can find our socials at Sunday Gravy Radio. The fan hotline is 815-242-2151. Sunday Gravy Radio, where the table's always full and the conversation never ends. We'll see you next time. Same table, same gravy.